Good afternoon. First in the good news category, congratulations to Whatcom Community College. They've now been recognized as a partner with Microsoft as a national leader in cybersecurity training. They're going to help train the new and existing faculty at 150 new community colleges, including Washington's 34 community and technical colleges. It's really an exciting continuation of our effort to give new career paths for Washingtonians. I was there the other day, and they're leading the charge nationally. Congratulations to Whatcom Community College. Congratulations to the Seattle Kraken for their first home ice win. The last time they beat the Montreal Canadiens was in 1917 when they won the Stanley Cup. We hope that portends a great season for the Kraken and all their fans who are now in the greenest, cleanest arena in the world, a net zero climate pledge arena. What a place, what a mission statement, what an accomplishment. We're pleased by reports out of Washington, D.C. about progress on the reconciliation bill, particularly the apparent agreement to commit over $500 billion to the fight against climate change. The scale of investment is necessary to defeat this monster, and we are appreciative of the efforts of all the members of Congress and the leadership of President Biden to see this through to the finish line. We hope it will get there as soon as possible. It is important that that get to the finish line and the reconciliation bill as well as the infrastructure bill. And again, thanks to our delegation working so diligently on this. On the vaccine front, I'm very, very pleased to report that almost 91% of employees of Washington State have verified that they are vaccinated. 30.2% of employees have received an accommodation. So combined, that means that more than 94% of state employees are complied with the requirements of the mandate. And that number will continue to go up as more employees become vaccinated. The good news is, based on available data, we lost only 2.9% of our employees. That's good news. The remaining 3.1% of employees are pending action, which includes being in the process of being fully vaccinated, or they're pending retirement or pending accommodations. So obviously not all those employees will be separated. Many of them are getting their vaccinations, finishing their second dose. So I'm confident our compliance numbers will only go up. Those numbers will be updated for you by the Office of Financial Management, and we are expecting to see more individuals choosing to continue their careers for Washington State. Good news on the vaccination front for our children. We are expecting FDA's final approval of the Pfizer COVID vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds in the next week. More than 300,000 children's doses are on their way to the state, and I know many families can't wait to avail themselves of this safe and effective vaccine. The State Department of Health is working with schools and healthcare providers in preparation for their approval, and with our continuing efforts to see to it that adults are vaccinated as well in the state. Now, the reason for that should be clear. While COVID cases and hospitalizations have declined over the last couple of months, they still remain very high. And unfortunately, in the recent week or two, we've experienced a plateauing of the numbers rather than a decline. This is very worrisome. We still have an average of more than 2,000 cases a day, and we know many are suffering due to this pandemic, including those who now are still in a waiting line to get elective surgery, because our hospitals remain stressed with high occupancy rate as much as 90%. Most systems are just now getting back to trying to do elective surgery. And if these numbers would go back and go up or continue even up, besides the inevitable death and disability of COVID, we would continue to see people unable to get elective surgery, unable to get cardiac surgery and cancer surgery and hip joints and the like. So we still have an extremely dangerous pandemic on our hands, and we've got to treat it with that sincerity or that seriousness. I think when I think about this, we really have reached a fork in the road for our state. Or are we going to accept COVID, allow it to continue to run wild? Or are we going to continue to fight it? And that's a definite decision for the state of Washington. Every day, I believe we should fight it. We should not surrender to it. We should continue our efforts to utilize this life-saving vaccine. We know we have the tools to beat this virus, and we ought to use them. So we're going to continue to be focused on this, of increasing vaccination, as really the only way out of this pandemic. And I'm glad we made real progress. And I could not be more delighted in the progress we've made with public employees becoming vaccinated, with now children have increasing access to this vaccine. We ought to be able to get on top of this virus. On the climate change front, another serious problem we face. I will be representing the state of Washington in Glasgow, Scotland next week at the group informally known as COP26. This is the most recent meeting of the international community to face this international threat. I think that, I don't think it's any hyperbole to say that the fate of our species will be decided in the next several years. And this is a major effort by the world community to respond to it. That's why I'm going. I will be leading a coalition of governors and mayors from around the world in an effort to jointly respond to this with our own action. Governors and mayors around the world do not believe we should rely just on our federal governments. So in addition to the federal government, I will be leading a meeting, I think it's on November 7th, and discussions with my colleagues from around the world about our efforts and our commitment to one another and our children to fight this battle. So whatever Congress produces, and it looks like they are going to produce a good package, we know that there is still going to be more work to be done to really do what is necessary to meet these goals. And we know it is not only our moral obligation, it remains a continued tremendous economic opportunity for our state. In the last couple of weeks, I've gone to people doing work building the first commercial all-electric airplane in Arlington, a leading battery manufacturer that could increase capacity using silicon anodes in Maltby, increase it by 50%, a company that's installing a giant fuel cell distribution or power system on one of the largest trucks in the world that's mining rare metals that are necessary for our products, and opened the first electric bus manufacturer in Ferndale. We are on a roll in creation of jobs in our state, and I will be working with my colleagues in Glasgow in the next 2 weeks to join them in their efforts in this regard. So we're going to look forward to that meeting. We know what is at stake. We've seen the fires. We've seen the death to shellfish. We see our western cedars right now turning brown. When you see a brown cedar tree, it's kind of a wake-up call that we need to act against climate change. So I'll look forward to that meeting in a couple weeks. I spoke to Kim Wyman on Tuesday and congratulated her on her appointment to the Department of Homeland Security Election Security Office. She's a great fit to lead this effort. Congratulations to the Biden administration to recognizing how she could help the nation. I will appoint her replacement in the coming weeks. The appointment process is still coming together. I believe that regardless of who is in that spot, they will continue the vital work that Kim put in place in this office. So we wish her well. We have an update for tenants and landlords as well. We're nearing the end of our eviction moratorium bridge. Local jurisdictions continue to work on rental assistance, eviction resolution, and the right to counsel. And we're proud in our state that we're one of the first to have a right to counsel nationally. During the pandemic, state and local authorities have made over $1 billion available to help landlords and tenants through this troubled time. And our eviction resolution program is helping landlords and tenants reach agreements. And the majority of the time, we've had success. We need landlords and tenants to take full advantage of these programs. These are first in the nation, some of them, and we look forward to their continued success. With that, stand for questions. You may fire when ready. Gridley.
Governor, lawmakers are starting to discuss potential changes to the long-term care plan, face criticism. Some people are excluded, people that might retire out of state, military families, people that are already older and may not have that standard time. Why not delay the program? There's businesses, unions, some lawmakers calling for a pause to sort of get a better handle on some of these issues, rather than starting at January 1st.
Well, if the legislature really wanted to do that, I suppose they could. They have not expressed an interest in doing that. I do not have authority willy-nilly to just cancel these laws. And I don't believe I have any emergency authority in this case. This is not COVID related. There's no COVID thing I can attach to the COVID pandemic here. So I really don't have authority unilaterally to do it. And I have not heard serious efforts from legislative leaderships that they'd want to do that. But I do believe there are some things that are going to be on the plate for the legislature in January to make some amendments. I'm open to a few of those ideas, and I think they're going to get serious consideration.
Do you have any concern that this program could be a liability for your party when the midterms?
No.
Why not?
Because it's a good plan that helps people get care, and we have a lot of people that don't have care, and they don't want to live in poverty, and they don't want to become wards of the state, and they don't want to put an obligation on the taxpayers of the state of Washington. And if we don't have a plan for long-term care, that's what happens. Then the taxpayers have to pay for their care. This is a system that will provide, like Medicare, like Social Security, financed in some similar ways, so that people will not become, wards of the state, so that they can experience dignity and control their own destiny. And as I've said, I think there's some things that deserve a look to see if they can be improved. And I think those are going to get a look in January and February, so I feel confident about it.
Governor, on the eviction moratorium, there are still a lot of local jurisdictions who are struggling to get that rental assistance out. Why not extend it any longer, and is there anything else the state can do to try to support counties and cities in getting that out?
Well, we've done about all we can do. We've given them millions and millions of dollars of cash, and it's up to them to get it distributed. We have asked them if there is anything. No one has suggested what we could do to help. We did extend the moratorium, and we have importantly created this bridge mechanism so that people aren't evicted on day one. People, I don't think, understand that there's a huge process, even after the conclusion of the moratorium, that would be involved in the eviction process, including right of counsel. So this is not going to happen on day one, right after the moratorium expires. And we have to have some end to the moratorium. You can't have an economy ultimately where there just nobody pays rent. And you have to have some transition, and we're moving to that transition. I'm pleased. I've talked to some of the local leaders. They have picked up the pace of their distribution dramatically because they've worked through some of their software and computer programs. So they are picking up that pace, and that's good to see. We encourage that, obviously.
Governor, on the vaccine mandate, provided some stats on the state workers, and the percentage of exemptions for state agencies is around 3% today. OSDI around data showing 90% are vaccinated, but close to 10% received exemptions, and it resulted in about 16,000 unvaccinated employees still working in public schools. Does it concern you? And I wonder if you envision having that many unvaccinated folks with a combination of working in public schools still, or do you hope to see fewer than that?
Well, I'm very encouraged by what we've been able to do. They significantly increased their vaccination rate, particularly amongst the non-certificated staff, and that's been good to see. I consider it a success. Would we like to say 100%? Yes. But they're the employer, we are not, and they handled this process within the protocols we established, but they are the employer. I could not control the employment decisions down to that granularity. So I'm just pleased that we have had, I would consider, unqualified improvements throughout all of the sectors that have been involved here. State employees, colleges, K through 12, hospitals, all of them have gone up dramatically in their vaccinations. So I'm just very pleased about it.
Superintendent Reagan also said that there's talk, at least among the education community, that if they, once the vaccine for students and younger students is out and available, a desire that if they can reach, say, 80%, some threshold, about 80% vaccination rate of staff and students, that they might be able to begin rolling back some of the restrictions and mandates that apply to public schools. Are you open to creating a threshold for rolling back some of the restrictions for public schools?
Well, we're hopeful that, yes, at some point, we want to remove these restrictions when we get to a level of activity of the virus in the community. When we get to certain levels that give us confidence we can do that, certainly we want to be in a position to do that. But as far as just a vaccination rate, I'm not sure that would be the right way to go about it. We want to look at the rate of the virus in the community. If you get to the X vaccination rate, but you still have a raging pandemic, and our assumptions were not turned out to not be scientifically valid, we need to judge all those. And unfortunately, you know, the science is just not clear that you can pick today a specific percentage of vaccination and say that will yield X% reduction in your infection rate. The science just doesn't have an answer to that question. If it did, perhaps we could today make some decisions in that regard, but it doesn't. So we have to look at it on a daily basis and see what we're achieving to keep our kids safe. And by the way, not just our kids. This child vaccination issue is certainly about the most beautiful Washingtonians, which is our children and grandchildren. But it also has an impact protecting their parents and their uncles and their neighbors. Because one of the goals of the vaccination for children is it reduces the infection and the ability of the child to go home and infect their grandparent and end up with their grandparent losing their life. So we all have a stake in this childhood vaccination issue, even if you're not in school, even if your kids or grandkids are not in school. We all have a stake in this.
Can I ask you about
Kind of following up on that, is there an end game as far as a vaccination rate, hospitalization rate, death rate? Is there at least a time when you believe this will all be said and done and we just have to live with COVID? And if that date comes, can these workers get their jobs back if they're available?
Well, these workers are eligible to reapply for work today. They just need to comply with the work rules, including the safety rules. Police have to put on a vest. They have to agree to put on a vest. State employees have to get a vaccination. So yes, they can apply today. All they have to do is be in compliance with our rules. There's no limitation on that. As far as yes, clearly there is a situation where we want to end some of the changes we've experienced in our life, including masking. And I hope that we will get to a point to do that. I believe that we will get to a point to do that. I'd like to make it as soon as possible. And the way to do that is to get as many people vaccinated as possible, and that's what we're doing. So I would say I'm doing the work to try to accelerate that happy day when we get to that point.
But when you get to that point, these people who refuse to get vaccinated, can they get their jobs back without being vaccinated?
If we removed the vaccine mandate at some happy day in the future where the virus disappeared because of physiological reasons or epidemiological reasons, that's a possibility. Yes, that's a possibility, but I can't tell you for sure that'll be the case because we can't know the course of the pandemic. But today, they're eligible to reapply if they will simply comply with the existing rules.
But is there a possibility that the
Virus will never go away.
Of course. Of course.
Okay.
Well, I think I've answered this now about 7,000 times, and I'm happy to continue to answer it. I do not have a crystal ball, and nor does any scientist in the world today, to predict the course of this virus. Science is not at a level. We are hopeful that more people will get vaccinated and we will not experience a sixth wave. But today, I am very concerned about experiencing a sixth wave this winter as people are coming indoors. They're becoming more exposed to transmission as they come closer indoors. We are concerned at the moment that we may be in that situation right now because I've indicated what was declining is now a plateau. So we could be seeing the start of another wave today. Do we know that for sure? We don't know that for sure, but we're concerned about it. So to ask me to predict what's going to happen 12 months from now is a fool's errand. Nobody can do that on the planet Earth today.
Governor,
Drew, did you, go ahead, Drew.
I know, Governor, the Republican Party has asked for you to replace the Secretary of State with a Republican. Is there any chance of that happening, and who are you looking at as potential replacements?
Well, we haven't ruled anything in or anything out. But I do disagree with the Republican Party where they think that somehow the Republican Party owns a particular office. Look, the Democrats have done pretty well in the governor's office for decades, but the Democratic Party does not own the governor's office. The Republicans have done well in the Secretary of State's office, but the Republicans do not own the Secretary of State's office. Nobody owns these offices. That's why John Spellman, when Democrat Henry Jackson lost his life, replaced him with a very respected Republican, Dan Evans, who went on to the U.S. Senate. That's been the history in our state. So I disagree with them that somehow that they own that particular office.
Can you speak to the K-12, the idea of a K-12 mandate, especially with the authorization coming up, and also the Biden rule for private businesses? Are you still thinking about taking away the testing option?
So we have not made any decision on either one of those issues. And I would think at some point each would have due consideration. We have no imminent decisions on either one. We will be looking at the OSHA rule very closely when it is issued to see how it meshes with our state vaccine mandates. Giving consideration to making sure it is in the same framework as our state mandate might make sense, but we've not made any decisions about that. On the school mandates, as you know, we have broad-scale school mandates for vaccinations. We have no imminent decision to change that, to add COVID to it, but I certainly cannot rule that out in any way in the right circumstances. And we will be really happy when our kids start to get vaccinated here next week.
Governor, the Washington Parks Commission is not answering a lot of questions, or even very few questions, about the resignation of the director of staff examination workforce. One of the allegations included suggesting that perhaps going outside the process of contracting. These are taxpayer dollars. The commission are not answering questions whether they review these contracts or cancel them. This is a voluntary board of members appointed by the governor. They don't appear to have accountability to anybody higher than them. Do you have faith in your commissioners? I know you appointed Mike Latimer, maybe Bay and Perez and Brett Brown as well. And what can your office do to get some answers on it?
Well, if you have answers you think that should be available or not, I'd certainly encourage them to get the answers for you and the public. And if you'll share things that you think have not been answered, please let us know. We'd like to have legitimate questions answered, obviously. Now, this is a dynamic we see a lot in Washington, that we have a distributed governance system where I don't control this group, like Fish and Wildlife. I don't control that group either. So I have a diminished ability to affect that. But if you think there's answers should be given, please let us know. I'll endeavor to get them answered.
Yeah, we'd like to know if they've reviewed the contracts in question and whether they've canceled all of them or decided to keep some of them.
I think that's a fair question, and I will try to encourage them to get it to you.
Let's go to the media on phone.
Up first, we'll go with Martin Bilbao from the Olympian. Go ahead, Martin.
Hello. I wanted to ask, what criteria are you using to select a new Secretary of State? I know you said you won't necessarily select another Republican, but I was just wondering what kind of qualities you are looking for in a Secretary of State.
All of them, to quote Sarah Palin. Look, all of the qualities you look for in an appointed position are important in this. I won't give you a detailed assessment. I will mention that I think that this is we need to look at this from a national security lens. We are being attacked by nation states in this regard, and I will want someone who has the capability to engage the federal government, our cybersecurity forces through the National Guard, that can respond as a national security threat, which indeed it is. I will just mention that one quality. And I will look for someone that can continue Kim's work, both in cybersecurity, but in general, assuring the integrity of the process. And we appreciate her willingness to do that, her willingness to buck folks who refused to honor the election results. And obviously, we'll want someone to do that as well.
Up next, we'll go to Rania Clower with KXLY. Go ahead, Rania. Rania, are you there? Okay. We will try Nicole Jennings with Cairo Radio. Go ahead, Nicole.
Good afternoon, Governor. You just said that we are possibly on the cusp of a sixth wave. Cities like New York and Los Angeles and several countries in Europe, as well as our own King County, have implemented vaccine mandates in restaurants and indoor entertainment venues and museums. Why has the state of Washington not done this if things are getting dire again? And at what point would we choose to do that?
Yeah, let me, if I can, I'm not describing, the situation has been dire for months. What I've suggested, though, we are at a plateau instead of declining, and that does cause us serious concern. That's how I would characterize the situation we're in. We haven't included a requirement for vaccinations in a variety of events. As you know, we did that a couple weeks ago. We've not added them to restaurant activity at the date because we don't think at the moment that makes sense for the state of Washington. But we're looking at the experience of King County to see if it's positive. And we'll continue to monitor that situation.
Up next, we'll go to Joey Thompson with Puget Sound Business Journal. Go ahead, Joey.
Hi, Governor. Just wondering if you had any update on when the state might roll out the Excelsior Pass. You announced a few weeks back working to adopt New York State's program for vaccine verification. And then, a lot of business owners and employers are looking at your vaccine mandate, and we're looking to see how many folks would leave. What message do you have to them as they prepare to mold, those similar mandates for their own companies, and waiting for your expansion on what President Biden might roll out?
Well, I would simply look at our success, which was dramatic in increasing the vaccination rates of our employees. It was dramatic. We may have started around 50%. Now we're over 90%. That is a dramatic improvement. It means lives saved. And if we could replicate that in many more industries, we're going to be in much better shape against this pandemic. And we need to be in much better shape in this pandemic. People need to understand if we just continue what we're doing, this pandemic is just going to continue to eat us alive. We have to improve our vaccination rate. When I say these numbers are plateauing, that means more people are dying every week. And that means we'd have to continue our masking protocols and everything else that we're doing. So we have to move the needle to get on top of this pandemic. So what I would say is, as an employer, tens of thousands of people, it works. People respond. And a lot of these folks just need a little nudge, or they need a little way to get them to really seriously to think about the issue, and they get vaccinated by the thousands. So I would heartily suggest it to other employers. Obviously, they need to think about operational issues, about how to verify vaccination rates and the like, but we have found a way to do this and have good services for people in the state of Washington.
I think Lacey wanted to jump in on that, Governor.
Well, Lacey, another question you asked about.
Yes, I can jump in here.
Passes, yes.
Lacey Fehrenbach, Deputy Secretary of COVID-19 Response. Just a point of clarification. I don't think in Washington State we're planning to adopt Excelsior Pass. We are working with a number of states, including California, Oregon, and New York, on a QR code that can be used as vaccine verification. So want to note that we want this to be something easy and accessible for Washingtonians, and we expect to have more to share about this very soon. We are going as quickly as we can to get that code written and tested and soft launched. But hoping to have more to share about that soon. In the meantime, there are multiple ways for businesses and individuals to verify vaccine. Those include your CDC card, a photo of your card, your digital certificate from MyIR, electronic health record, or other documentation from your healthcare provider.
Thanks, Lacey. Thanks for your leadership.
Okay, we will go back to try Rania one more time with KXLY. Go ahead, Rania.
Also email us her questions.
Okay, so we will go to Peter Fairley with Investigate West. Go ahead, Peter.
Sorry, greetings, Governor.
Hi.
Thanks for being available. British Columbia just issued an update to their climate plan that calls for, among others, continued development of natural gas resources. And I wondered what your thoughts were on the sustainability of that, and you know, whether Washington is dependent on those supplies.
So I have not seen what you're referring to, so I won't give you any specific comment. But in general, we are in a position where increased reliance on fossil fuels of any type is a very questionable position right now. The numbers are just too demanding to reduce our fossil fuel and our carbon emissions. So increasing infrastructure that goes in that direction really is a dangerous decision. But I can't talk about exactly what you're referring to because I don't know what you're referring to. We will have measures before the legislature, and I forgot to mention this in my comments. I will be proposing the legislature additional measures to reduce our carbon footprint. Even with our best in the nation laws, we do not have enough on the books today, even including what the federal government is about to do, to meet our carbon targets. To actually reduce carbon at the pace we need to decrease it. So I will be asking for additional measures of this next session of the legislature to restrain the use of fossil fuels, including natural gas in some circumstances. I think that is necessary, and the science makes that clear. So we've got more work to do in this regard.
Remarks, Governor?
No, we're coming up Thanksgiving. I will tell you that there's a lot to be thankful for. And right now, as governor of a great state, I want to be thankful for the thousands of people in public service in Washington who have become vaccinated. They not only have protected themselves, but they have protected the people we work for, and they have protected their co-workers. They have understood that it's not just about me, it's about we. And I'm thankful for what they've done and their continuous service in the state of Washington, because they are serving Washington, and I'm glad we're doing that. Thanks a million.